Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. You guys know what time it is. Time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And I saw a video come through my feed by Jeff Nippard, aka Jeff Nipples, where he created his own video of what he called Bro Jeff, and then he wants to break down and correct everything that he did in his Bro Jeff video. Now that's clever marketing. Make a video of stuff that's wrong just so that you can make a new video and get hundreds of thousands of views addressing what you got wrong. That's clever. That's smart. So let me go ahead and put on my +5 hat of speechcraft, lovingly called my +5 hat of autism by many of you, and let's talk about this. What I thought was interesting is that Jeff kind of approached a lot of this from a very, very limited perspective. And I do want to jump into that before I jump into some of the points he made, and maybe discuss these in a larger context. But he keeps talking about bodybuilding nutrition, and it's like, Jeff, there aren't that many bodybuilders in the world. I don't know why everyone out here always wants to market to bodybuilding. And he says, like, we, the way bodybuilders train. You have 1 million subscribers. There are not even close. They're not even close to 1 million bodybuilders in the world. All right. The number of people who actually even lift weights just to be better at sports, like actual athletes, exceeds bodybuilders. Okay. That's actually a larger number of people than bodybuilders. Bodybuilders are a relatively small number of people. What I thought was interesting, too, is that he pointed out, well, the way that we train as bodybuilders, we don't really need to get carbs post-workout. Well, yeah, you do for bodybuilders, not for everyone else, because most bodybuilders inject insulin, right? The overwhelming majority of bodybuilders inject insulin after they train. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, wait a minute. What about natural bodybuilding? Natural bodybuilding is not really a real thing, guys. That's a gimmick. That's a marketing ploy to sell supplements, okay? All natural bodybuilding means is they can pass a drug test, right? It doesn't mean they're drug-free. It just means they can pass a drug test. And by and large, the majority of really successful natural bodybuilders still use stuff. Like, again, so let's come back over to that point. Natural bodybuilding only exists to sell supplements. It's just a new thing that the supplement industry created so that they can market lean physiques again, because too many people realize that the other guys are on insane amounts of drugs. It's no longer appealing to the public, and so they just needed to create some different federations and other stuff to keep pimping supplements and just call it natural bodybuilding, where the guys just use a hell of a lot less, and a lot of guys try to do it natural, but the majority of those, they're not really going to make it. They're not going to be really, truly successful, because plenty of the top natural pros are already obviously using abuse amounts of gear again. They're not even questionable if they're natural. It's just how much are they using. So you kind of come back over the point. If you're going to talk in the context of bodybuilding, most bodybuilders pin insulin after they train. So therefore, bodybuilders do need carbs after they train. I mean, I'm not sure what's lost in the equation there, unless you're implying that people who are drug-free and don't compete in bodybuilding are actually bodybuilders, in which I'm just going to say you're full of shit. They're not bodybuilders, just people who work out. And as far as it's to gain muscle, everyone lifts weights to gain muscle. All right, even I, as a power lifter, a very large amount of my training is geared purely around getting thicker and bigger. Right, it's a big part of it. Of course it is. The bigger muscle is a stronger muscle, right? Same reason a football player, American football. I guess what the Brits would call a hand egg. What they do, a lot of it's geared to get bigger muscles. So over to the point, was he right about some of that? Do we need post-workout carbs? No, there's no reason to think that we do. And that's even in the context of athletes. And when we talk about all these discussions he had about protein versus glycogen replenishment, I think this is all context dependent with the style of eating that you do. And this is what the research shows in real athletes. Let's step away from the bodybuilding world. Let's talk about actual athletes, right? Because bodybuilding is not a sport. They're not athletes for the most part. They're a bunch of ass clowns who pose in their panties. So when you look at it in that context, glycogen replenishment isn't that big of a deal. And again, it has to do with what the rest of your diet looks like. Like you take triathletes, for example, and if they run a largely carbohydrate-based diet, they burn an enormous number of carbohydrates doing a 3-hour run. But if if they follow a different diet, let's say they do a keto diet, which is a large growing trend in a lot of sports. I personally, even as a strength athlete, I do a keto diet, and I don't even do carb ups. I don't do carb days at all. What they find is that they just don't burn that many carbs during that 3 hour run, and they're able to replenish 100% of their muscle glycogen from their protein and their fat, because you can also replenish glycogen off of fat to some extent. About 1 calorie per gram of fat can be converted into glucose due to glycerol backing on it. Now, people would argue, well, that's all a metabolically expensive process. It burns calories. Well, if you like eating a lot of calories, having a metabolic processes in your body that burn more calories isn't really a terrible thing, is it? I mean, people treat that like it's a negative. We live in a world where a surplus of calories is not exactly a problem. Therefore, metabolically expensive processes in first world countries in your body shouldn't really be viewed as a negative thing unless you literally struggle to get enough calories. I don't think that's the case for most of us. So you come over to that point of even people who are doing very serious training. I mean, a 3 hour run burns a hell of a lot more glucose under normal conditions than a lower body bodybuilding session does, right? People who are adapted to that still have no problem off of that without eating any carbs at all to get full muscle glycogen replenishment. So a lot of that comes back around to what is it that you're consuming already. I mean, that's a big factor also. But as far as the muscle protein synthesis and glycogen replenishment post-training, he's right. Protein alone is enough to do that. Like literally consuming protein, and I don't mean a protein shake. Protein shake, no, eating a steak will do it. You can replenish all your muscle glycogen by eating a steak an hour after you train. You're good. You're fine. The other thing I thought it was interesting with some of that, though, is that he pointed out, well, a lot of just glycogen replenishment, it's not bro science because it's based loosely on scientific theory. Well, that's what bro science is, Jeff. It's kind of, that was a weird statement for him to make in there, and something I felt like maybe we should point out. Jeff, you do know that's what bro science actually is. To say, well, something isn't fully supported in the literature, but it's loosely based on the literature, and it's based upon some scientific concepts that may not actually really seem to work in the real world. They don't seem to really work, but it's based on some concepts. That's the definition of bro science. Hey, bro, I read this supplement study that said if I take whey and dextrose post-workout, I need it to replenish my glycogen in the anabolic window. There's a study. Bro. That's called bro science. Now, the reality is those are studies funded by the supplement industry, having people train fasted and everything else, and so they could pimp their products. But the point is that is kind of bro science. And also the thing that it was interesting, he talked about, how much protein do we need to build muscle? And he did point out the data does seem to suggest there's very little, if any, anabolic benefit beyond going around, 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight. When you're in a caloric surplus, that actually is true. Maybe not necessarily true at maintenance, though. So on a recomposition, not necessarily true. But the question we kind of ask is that, are we even consuming all this protein for the purposes of building muscle? Because you get over to that point and he's like, only a certain amount of protein that you consume is used to build new muscle. Yeah, that's true, and it's not very much. Realistically speaking, if you're consuming very large amounts of protein because you think you're going to convert an extra 20 grams of protein a day into muscle, you don't understand muscle growth rates. That's not even possible. There's enough protein in an apple. A damn apple, there's enough protein to fuel all of your muscle growth for a day. So hopefully people understand that that's not why we're consuming protein. We're consuming protein for a lot of recovery things going on in the body, a lot of metabolic functions, a lot of remodeling and tissue remodeling in the body. There are a lot of reasons we consume protein. Then when we start getting into larger amounts of protein for certain types of athletes, a lot of it's because we are burning it for fuel. We're using it for glycogen replenishment. Let's say you don't want to eat carbs. Let's say that you find that you perform and function better on a low carbohydrate diet. Protein becomes a very valuable fuel source. It becomes a very valuable source of replenishing glycogen. And people say, well, why would you want to do that? Well, there's certain things that happen in the body as far as inflammation goes. And that inflammation is important for high volume athletes. These are things that you have to weigh out from a sports nutrition perspective. And this is something that I know, for example, that myself and a lot of other guys I know who are masters athletes and strength athletes find that this sort of dietary approach controls connective tissue inflammation a lot better, allowing us to train with higher training volumes and recover from it more effectively in certain ways. So, I mean, again, subject to great debate. We'll get over to that point, though, if you come back to that and say, well, what about, don't you need all this glycogen, don't you need this insulin response? But you get that from protein. You get that from protein. So we come over to that point of how much protein do you need? Well, there's a difference between how much do you need to build muscle versus, how much protein are you consuming for a variety of other functions that are related to optimizing performance, recovery, controlling inflammation in the body. Well, that's a totally different topic. And that's a very, very difficult thing to pin down, but it's a hell of a lot higher than what you would be consuming if you're talking about just building muscle mass. And it's not necessarily that more is better, but I think Jeff is approaching this from such a limited perspective because he's only thinking in terms of immediate responses in the body as it pertains to his interest in bodybuilding, without stepping back and maybe saying, hey, there's a larger context to all of these things in terms of sports nutrition. Right, which is really what we should be discussing in the fitness world. If we're going to call ourselves fitness, we don't need to be worrying about goofy-ass bodybuilding. We need to be worried about fitnessing as a more all-encompassing term: general health, fitness, sports, athleticism. All these things. That's fitness, guys. That's fitness, right? Not flexing your abs in front of a bunch of other dudes covered in oil in your panties. All right, that's a different animal. That should almost have its own category. They leave the word fitness out of it, right? All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.